And today, we're going to start with our lovely Tonya Echols, who's traveled specifically from the ICF to be with us here today to kick off the session. And we're going to be talking about something very important, which is human-centered leadership. So let me take a minute to first introduce who Tonya is and what she brings to the session before I hand over you to her. I have the pleasure and privilege of introducing Tonya. She is a global leader and a multi-award-winning international executive coach and leadership and organization development consultant. She is the founder and managing principal of, I'm not going to take the liberty to say this name, Tonya. Is it pronounced Voyager? Voyager. A global coaching and consulting firm. She has 28 years of experience in corporate management, technology, media, finance, coaching, and she works with numerous organizations across a variety of industries, including Fortune 500 companies. With a master's degree in organizational leadership, she is a summa cum laude graduate of the University of Tennessee in business administration accounting. She's a doctoral candidate in leadership psychology with emphasis on neuroscience. See what you're getting right up front on day 2 of the first session. She's an adjunct faculty member for the graduate program at Williams & Mary's and Harvard University Extension School, teaching leadership and organizational behavior. She is a professional certified coach credentialized by the ICF, and she is also chair of the Professional Coaches Global Board at ICF and director of the Global Enterprise Board. Yeah, so off the session, you can connect, you can figure out, you can ask your questions and doubts about and around ICF also. She's the right person to go to. So I'm going to take a pause here and actually introduce the session before I invite her in. The name of the session, the theme is Navigating the Polarity of Business Performance and Leadership. We spoke a lot yesterday about purpose and profits. I think your session will really bridge the gap today, Tonya, to help us get there. In today's dynamic business landscape, the interplay between business performance and authentic human-centered leadership is an ever-evolving challenge. This keynote by Tonya will explore the inherent polarity of driving business outcomes while embodying inspirational and transformative leadership. This interactive session will highlight strategies to harmonize the seemingly opposing forces with a very holistic approach to navigating the symmetry. I love the way you use the word symmetry, yeah? So inherent in our day-to-day lives, yet so far away in achieving that, of driving performance and building a healthy and inclusive culture, not only for teams, leaders, but also organizations to thrive. May I have the pleasure of inviting you, Tonya, on stage. Can I hear a round of applause for her? And I will also like to invite Mangesh ji, if he's around, to felicitate Tonya. Is Mangesh ji around? Colonel Vinay, then can I call you on stage, please?
All right, well, is this on? Yeah. Oh, thank you.
Such a pleasure meeting you.
Wonderful to meet
and
you.
welcome to ICF Pune.
Thank you so much. I'm honored to be here.
Excuse me, sir. All welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I always like to start off by receiving, so that's a wonderful way. But hopefully you all will recognize and take something away as I give this and share, as we all share together. So I'm excited for our time, and hopefully you all have had a chance. If you can scan this QR code. I tend to like to have interactive sessions. I like us to connect. I like us to, even in big rooms, I think we can still stay connected and interact with one another. So you can take a shot of the QR code, and I want you all, because we're going to follow up on this shortly, but I want you to tell me what's most important for an organization's success. Is it focus, role, clarity, accountability, results? Or do you select trust, communication, diversity, culture, and engagement? So take a moment as we get started here and get a copy of the QR code, or you can just go to menti.com and use the code you see at top there. So I want you all to make the decision. This is binding. Whatever we say in here is going to go around the world. So I want you all to be ready for it. So excited to be here to be your representative on the PC Global Board as chair. Greetings from my hometown of Atlanta, Georgia, and greetings from ICF and the PC Global Board. We work every day to support you as members, as chapter members, chapter leaders, as coaches out in the world, as organizations that embrace and support coaching to make sure that we create the space that allows this work that we do to thrive, allows the organizations you support and engage with to thrive. So I'm so excited to be here with all of you. And as you're doing that and getting to what you so wonderfully started us off with, Rupinder, is navigating the polarity of business performance and leadership, that human-centered leadership. That's a commitment that's so important to me because I'll be honest, probably for the first of that 28 years, the first chunk of it, I did what a lot of people who came out of college in the 90s did. You just came in and you figured it out. That was all of your leadership training, was just like, go lead these people. And that's what I did. But I wasn't always as artful and as skillful at it as I hope I'm growing into and will continue to always grow into. I tell you that because when I started out, and again, this goes back to the biggest part of my career as a leader, I spent leading a large digital media team that supported websites for radio, television, and newspaper properties across North America. So this was at the turn of the century when no one knew what Google meant, and Amazon just sold books, and you would get little discs of DVDs in the mail if you wanted to watch a movie from 6 months ago. So it's a very different time, but it was all about transformation. It was about changing, especially coming from media, for any of you who still are connected, whether it's through a newspaper, television, radio. It was a big transformation. And in the case of newspapers, we're talking about an industry that's hundreds of years old, that we said, hey, nobody's doing that thing with having the paper in your hand every day. When's the last time anyone in this room got a paper thrown on your, an actual physical newspaper? Yep. Here's a couple. Applause for the people who are still getting physical newspapers. That's good. Where does it come from now? Where? Yeah, hold it up. Your phones, right? That's where we tend to get our news. So I was working in an industry that had to have a massive transformation, a massive change in how they did their business. And unfortunately, we did a lot of focusing on the business side. But we had a lot of people who needed to be upskilled. They needed to have support, human support, in the fact that the jobs that they used to do are no longer relevant, at least not in the way that they used to do them. So that's where we have this big dichotomy. And again, I started out my career, I'm still technically a chartered accountant, as you might call it, or a CPA, but that's where I began my career many years ago, working at Arthur Andersen, for those of us old enough to remember that organization. But that was kind of, you came in and you just manage people, but you manage people through the business. Because basically, the way we used to think about it is you have a job, good for you, and go do it. I don't care how you feel. I'm not concerned if you're happy, if you're whole, if you feel you're contributing. You just came in and did your job, and then you went home. But the world has changed, or has it? So now let's take a look. Did anyone have a chance to submit your poll here? Should be showing up, but you never know how there we go. Oh, okay. Here we go. So it seems like there's a lot of focus on trust, communication, diversity, culture, and engagement, right? But we also still have focus, role clarity, accountability, and results. What's that tell you? Who wants the answer? I'm here to give you the ultimate answer. Are you ready for the ultimate answer? Which one do I choose? People leadership or getting the business done, getting the work done? The answer, as I like to put it, and this one's a little tricky because of this extra change I have to do here because it's live. The answer, here it comes. Which one is it? Yes. The answer is yes. It is all and both of those things. And it's our role to figure out how to balance that. We spend a lot of time trying to figure out, okay, do I take care of the business or do I take care of the people? And I fully admit that I tend to, as many of us as coaches might, tend to index towards the people. I always say if you take care of the people, the business will take care of itself. But we want to be careful of that. We'll talk about that in a moment. But we want to be able to take care of both, because the trick is, it's a polarity. What's a polarity? Come talk to me. What's a polarity? Extremes, right? They are opposing contradictory forces. Two things that don't necessarily seem like they're going to work great together. But they're also things that are highly interdependent. Can you run a successful business without a healthy, happy organizational culture and people who like being there? Not for very long. You can run it to the ground probably, but you can't run it for very long. Can you have healthy, happy people and then maybe have a business that isn't successful? Is that possible? Yeah, it is possible. It is possible. We'll talk about that more in a moment. But it's important to understand that it's not a solvable problem. There is no answer except for what I just showed you. Yes, the answer is both. It's a matter of how do we navigate and balance that. It's the yes and. I can have an empty, efficient office with nobody in it. I can have healthy, happy people, or I can have both. And that's what we really want to make sure that, back to that word of symmetry, that we are looking to find that ultimate balance. Because ultimately, stuff gets in the way. In my role for decades leading large teams, I have talked to the United States Secret Service, the United States Federal Bureau of Investigations, the FBI, Homeland Security. I have talked to so many different people all in the course of my people leadership. Because when you have a business, you have humans working at a business. You have humans who need visas updated. And I have literally run downtown to meet an attorney so we can get paperwork done to make sure that one of our employees had their visa paperwork in order. In the middle of a major launch for one of our programs, I won't go into it because no one really cares at this point, but our VP of IT was having very serious problems in his marriage to the point that he was concerned his wife would show up and harm herself in the middle of the launch. That has to be managed. That has to be navigated. I can't just sit here at this person who's in the middle of a personal crisis and say, yeah, well, can you get that stuff up by 2 p.m.? It doesn't work like that. It's about taking care of the people, but also recognizing to take care of the business. What gets in your way? I'd love to hear from some of you. Just shout them out if you don't mind. What are some things that get in your way between your business and people and business? Deadlines. Louder? Deadlines. Business got to get done, right? Deadlines. We have things that are due at a certain time. They have to happen at a certain time every single month. What else gets in your way? Yeah? Beliefs. Beliefs about what?
Beliefs that business runs in a certain way, and that's where the whole operating life.
Some limiting beliefs, right? That the business has to work and look and sound a certain way. Most definitely. So when someone who comes in who may be brilliant, but they don't fit what your organization has historically maybe engaged with, we might back away from them. Or if someone comes in with this idea that's going to revolutionize what we do, talk about transformation again, oh, but that's not how we do things here. So not only am I limiting my organization, I have now let someone who's very talented potentially walk out that door or sentence them to a life of drudgery in a cubicle, not speaking up again, right? All those things get in the way. Again, I was doing a lot of this. Oh, did I see a hand back there? Fear. Fear of control.
Fear of losing control if I get
Yeah, losing control. If I let all these employees out here, all my team members do whatever they want so they feel good, are they just going to be out here not doing their jobs? I shut the lights down. Yay! I did it yesterday. Oh, not me. I thought I did it. It was taking all the energy out of the room. I'll just keep talking and we'll keep going. I'll share again. I don't know how many of you were involved in the world of .com during the early 2000s, or turn of the century, as I said, yeah. But it was all about how cool you were. It was all about, and for us especially, I worked for a company that's now 140 years old. And we were trying so desperately to show that we were cool. So we would fly out to Mountain View and you had to take the corporate jet and go do all this stuff. And we had ping pong tables in our break rooms and, you know, all the cool huddle spaces. And we got to take down all of our offices and cubes and everybody's just going to work in a big circle on the floor. I don't know. We were all doing all of these things to try to look different than we were. But we really weren't, focusing on the business as much as we could because there was money coming in from everywhere. Everybody wanted to be involved in digital. Everybody wanted to be involved in tech, right? And then we wanted to keep people happy, so you bring your dogs to work and you wear, shorts to work, which we normally don't do in the U.S., right? And I had an employee once who, once a year, he took a day of silence. So he would write on a whiteboard, but he wouldn't speak to anybody, right? And that's wonderful. You want to embrace all of that, but that was new. That was different. I didn't know business was supposed to work that way. So those are the things that we start to recognize, that the business gets, quote unquote, gets in the way, and understanding how to deal with the change in people gets in the way. Let's see if this is still working. Probably not. Oh, there we go. Here's the answer, though. Stop looking for a winner. There's no winner between people and business. It's not a football game or a cricket match. There isn't a winner. We want to learn to do both, which means, let's try it again. We want to breathe. So I'm going to invite everyone right now, just put everything down, close your eyes for a minute, and breathe. Take a deep breath in, take up as much space as you can, and exhale. So between breathing in and breathing out, which one do you choose? Breathing in. She's going to choose. Okay, so for the rest of my talk, you're just going to breathe in. So hold that. Any breathing out people? You're going to just breathe out? Okay, just breathe out. Why doesn't that work? Come on. It doesn't work. And just holding it out doesn't work, right? It's the flow. We can't choose one or the other, just like we can't choose between people and business. We choose both. So if anyone ever asks you what's this polarity thing? How can it be both? Tell them to breathe in and out. Not only to explain polarities, but also just to calm down and to give yourself space and to recognize that we can aim for balance. This is what I call aiming for balance, AIMM. So Tonya, what does aiming for balance mean when we're trying to navigate polarities? Well, it means that we build awareness to the fact that there is such a thing as a polarity, and accept the mindset that it's unsolvable, that it's okay that I don't have an answer, right? We want to have that awareness. I also want to release the judgment that one is bad and one is good. Again, as I said, as coaches, I tend to index myself more towards, let's take care of the people, take care of the people. That doesn't mean it's bad to also take care of the business. I want to release the judgment and stay tapped into my curiosity as to what can I do today to help the business and support my team. Okay. Then we have identify. You want to identify what the polarity is. What are the two things here? Business goals, leadership. What are the two things? And then what are the benefits of each? What do I want to breathe in? What do I want to breathe out? That's important. What's also important if we're trying to keep something in balance? What do we have to be aware of? What do we want to be aware of if I'm trying to keep something in balance? When I'm breathing in too much or I'm breathing out too much. When I'm overly focused on the business, or I'm not focusing enough, or I'm overly focusing on people. And I know some people say, wait a minute, focusing on people too much is not possible. We'll talk in a moment about why that is. Okay. And then we want to monitor for breathing in and out, just like you have in hospitals when people are monitoring your breathing. You want to monitor your breathing as an organization. Who's keeping track of? Who's looking at the metrics of productivity? Who's looking at the metrics of our employee satisfaction, job satisfaction? Who's tracking all of that? And how do we recognize when we're out of balance? So that final M is the manage. So managing it, manage when we are getting out of balance, always looking out for when that's happening. Helping people connect to the vision and the purpose when we do things that are going to cause maybe a shift to happen one way or the other. So awareness, A, I, identity, manage, M, and M, whoops, there we go, monitor, M, and then manage. Through building relationships, having our sense of vision and purpose, having that, the ability to empower our teams and empower ourselves to engage in the behaviors that allow us to create this flow. So how many of you have worked with polarities before? Done some of that? Yep, exactly. So you know how this works, right? You do these maps, we pull them out, we get teams all around them, and we have these incredible conversations when we stop, let people breathe, and think about what are the benefits of each. What are the benefits of the business goals, and what are the benefits of people-focused leadership? Beautiful. We do this, we come back with this list, and then maybe somebody pulls it out 6 months later. We actually want to engage with this and keep this moving forward. What are the warning signals that we're overemphasizing business? Those of you who've done a lot of work in organizational behavior might be familiar with this, the Evelyn, right? This is a cycle we can go through. We see our employees when they are being undervalued, when they aren't being served. They start with voice, because your most active and constructive employees are going to say, hey, something's going on here. I don't really feel supported. Our voices are not being heard. So those people will speak up until they feel they aren't being heard and their needs aren't being met. And that's what gets scary, is when they go quiet and they just say, I'll sit here and wait it out. I'll be a good team member. I'll go along with it. And hopefully it'll just get better. And then it doesn't get better. And they end up moving to neglect, what everyone started to talk about now, quiet quitting, right? I'll just sit here and collect my paycheck. It's destructive because I'm not adding any value. And it's passive because I'm still not actively necessarily engaged in doing my job to my best of my ability. And that'll happen for a while. And as the saying goes, for some businesses, that's the worst thing that can happen, because you have people there who are underperforming and not very engaged. The other alternative is they exit. They leave. So when you start to see any of these happening, that's a warning sign as an organization. When do you want to start to recognize that, hey, we've got to support our people? Now, the next warning sign that we have on the other side of when we're overemphasizing the people side. So what are some signs? I want to hear from you all, because I'm sure we've experienced it. What's an indicator that maybe we have lost some of that control that we talked about with our teams? Attrition, right? So they might be leaving, yeah. Loss of productivity. That's where the business stuff's like, hey, we have birthday cakes every week, and we have happy hours, and we have dinners, and we have all these events, but nobody's getting any work done, right? So productivity goes down. We have lack of accountability. Oh, I know it was due on Tuesday, and I work with so many leaders who are so afraid to set clear expectations and hold their team members accountable for the work that they said they were going to do, right? So we see that lack of accountability. We see poor decision-making, because people are too afraid to make a decision because they don't want to hurt anybody's feelings, right? We want to take feelings into consideration, but if it's keeping us from making important business decisions, again, we're over-indexing, right? Those are things that we want to be aware of. What else?
Artificial sense of harmony.
Lack of sense of harmony? Is that what I heard?
Saying yes to everything.
Saying yes to everything. And I love that you use the word harmony, because a lot of people will say, I like harmony. And we all like, who doesn't like harmony? Anybody? We're all good on harmony? Is everybody plus someone? Okay. But they think harmony means that we don't have conflict. You can have psychological safety when you are able to have conflict in a healthy way, that I can still be harmonious, but that doesn't mean I have to do and say the same things you say, the same things you say, the same someone else says. That actually isn't harmony. That's just kind of everybody turning into robots and agreeing to do the same thing, which is how companies end up really far down the road on projects that they shouldn't work on, that they don't want to work on. Dependence on relationships. And some may hear that and say, oh, don't we want to be dependent on relationships? Not if that's the only way to get this done. The only way to get this project through is you got to go and shake hands with this person, and that's the only way it'll happen. What happens when that person's gone? What happens if these two people that this relationship is so dependent upon somehow don't get along anymore? What happens again to our productivity? Inconsistent treatment inequities. When we start to treat everyone so uniquely that some people end up getting treated better than others just because they asked. Wait, I didn't ask. Well, you didn't ask. I'd have given that to you as well. Wait a minute. Should I even be doing that? Is it within our organizational values to even give that kind of special dispensation to someone? Turnover, we talked about the attrition. Resistance to change. I like the way things are, and as humans, we normally do. But if we stay the way we are in great danger of becoming irrelevant. So it's important that we recognize that if people are too comfortable, right, we can be comfortable with change. We tend to approach change from a neurological standpoint by triggering our fear responses and systems within our minds, as opposed to helping people recognize here's the opportunity. Back to that vision and purpose I talked about. Right? So we want to watch out for those warning signals. So we had the warning signals for the people side. Here's the warning signals for the business side. And so now let's talk about the strategies. Your organizational culture and values. Build a culture where we live with this polarity. When that team member, that manager, that supervisor comes into your office and says, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? Make sure that we are reinforcing that as an organization, we're trying to do both. We're trying to find that flow, building the trust. So if any of you hear this today and you're like, oh, I want to go back, and yes, we're going to work on both, and then you just start going out and sitting in people's chairs and saying, hey, how you doing? How you feeling? And you haven't built up that trust, it will make no difference to them. They have no reason to believe you are making any change in how you show up and how you engage with them. And the same on the other end. We have all, I'm sure many of us have experienced where we worked for someone who was a great person to work for, who they were fun to hang out with, but they weren't really good business people. So I try to come in on Tuesday and say, hey, let's talk about these business issues. I have no reason to trust you're going to follow through on any of those things. I've been sending you and giving you ideas for the past 2 years, and you never take them any further. Until you build that trust, you can't create that flow that allows for the polarity. As I mentioned earlier, your expectations and accountability. Setting that up to make sure that everyone knows this is the expectation, that we're always looking out for both. Is it easy? No. But it should always be the expectation, and we hold each other accountable for doing our best to always keep that polarity and flow. Succession planning and talent development, people, right? Back to the people. Are we promoting, are we educating the people who are doing these kinds of behaviors, who are living the way that we want them to live within our organization, focusing both on our business goals and our people? And as we've all heard, agility and flexibility and the ability to make decisions quickly, as well as communication and transparency, which is the underpinning of it. That's why I put it last, because all of this doesn't work if we don't have that as your baseline. So how does all of this come together? How do we, that sounds like a lot to do, right? Because you got stuff that's due Tuesday afternoon. Well, something that really does support that, and no surprise, coaching. There is not anything on that list that you can't help support your businesses with, support your team members with, support your clients with, that coaching can't help support. Now, I'm a big fan. I do a lot of consultation and training and mentoring, and those are all important. But coaching allows you to also get that individual one-on-one level, or do it within specific teams and groups, to be able to really focus in on the individual challenges that each person, each function, each department, each group is challenged with. Coaching gets to that deeper level. We can send people to training, and we love sending people to training. I do a lot of training myself. But after I leave that training, I still know, but there's this thing about me, from my experience, my personality, that makes it hard for me to trust people, that makes it hard for me to really communicate with transparency. Wow, I wish I could talk to someone about that. We can. We can do that through coaching. So coaching is a key that can unlock a lot of these strategies and allow us to focus both on the business as well as the people. So with that, I just want to open it up for any questions. I want us to also just take a moment to breathe and reflect and discuss. Yes. We've got a mic coming to you, I think.
Good morning, and very interesting. So far, so good.
So far, so good. Okay, I'll take that. We're good.
And my name is Sandeep Kalra. I'm from Mumbai chapter. And going back to the last slide when we talking about trust as the integral part for Polarity to exist effectively.
Yeah.
And it's a function of time. And when we say trust is a function of time, what challenges you must have faced since you've been dealing with this with various organizations, especially for merger, acquisitions, and JVs?
Yeah. So, and you're asking how do we help when there isn't a lot of time and you're trying to bring people together? Honestly, there's no substitute for time. So to recognize it's a process, but we also can leverage, and I say this as a coach, but also as someone who led large groups, that I brought in coaches. I brought in people to actually work with the teams. So you actually bring people together and you talk about all that stuff. You actually get it out on the table, as opposed to, again, normally it takes years to uncover these different personality differences or my motivations about what's important for me at work versus someone else. If you're really trying to get, you really have to be committed to this as a leader, as an organization, to get people in a room and say the hard stuff out loud, to say the uncomfortable things out loud and do it in a very compressed period of time. Is it, hey, we walk out of this room and everybody trusts each other and hugs each other? No. But we've gotten a lot farther, and we've shown our commitment by getting people together to have those conversations, and we have created now a culture where we continue to have them over time. So we open up the space, and then we keep at it. Yes. Hello.
Hi, thanks for a great presentation. You mentioned in the last slide that organization culture and it's okay.
The people in the back want to hear you too.
Sure. So in the last slide, you mentioned about organization culture and values as one of the strategies.
Yeah.
So in my humble opinion, a lot of times when we look at mission, vision, and values, we see that the CEO -1 teams sometimes mimic it, but they don't go down because sometimes it's very politically correct to say what is the mission and the vision, and the larger organization doesn't even understand what is the mission and vision or the values. The term values also is not understood by many people, even at senior levels, because there could be a difference in perception between values, beliefs, attitudes, and everything. My question to you is that when you are looking at driving coaching and doing this organization culture and values, how do you practically apply this so that there is a lot of congruence within the organization and within the top leaders?
Yeah, no, that's wonderful. And to that point, there are so many organizations now who don't even have like a separate mission vision. It's just one sentence and they say it kind of covers everything. So they don't even specify our vision versus our mission and our values. So I always think about vision, and you all know this. Vision is where we want to be. It's the future state, as we tend to call it, but it's something that is so broad that it can evolve. Right, I talked about coming out of newspapers, and newspapers focused on being print newspapers. What are they actually? They're content providers. But they were so focused on the mission, how do I get that information out to people, that they lost all sight of the vision. So when technology changed, they didn't know what to do. So they're lost. And then values, I always try to shape that as the guardrails. Here are the areas that we won't go outside of to accomplish our business goals. And I sit down with organizations and we have that conversation to separate out those three things. Now, to your point, let's say we did all that. Yay, and it's up on our board and we printed it out and we got, all this cool promo stuff about it, and they're still not doing it. So we obviously have to look at leadership in that organization, but I also challenge all of us to start where we are. Yes, maybe my boss isn't doing this, but I can live in the integrity with the organization that I joined and start to do it to the best of my ability where I am. You also start to influence upwards, right? So maybe my boss doesn't believe in the mission. My boss just wants to get promoted or have the numbers look good this quarter. So I help them see how what I'm trying to get done serves their purpose in numbers looking good, and they actually then can move forward and develop their careers. Nothing wrong with wanting to develop your own career, right? But I recognize that what's important for them is different than what's important for me. And I don't have to compromise my values, but I can help someone see a vision that they may not on their own and influence upwards in that way. How does that resonate for you hearing that? Yes, you can. That's not hard. We're not looking for fake harmony. But how does that resonate for you? Yeah. Yeah. Hi.
I would like to compliment you on a fantastic presentation that you made.
Oh.
And my question is that a lot of pressure on profitability or performance today is driven by the nature of capital.
I'm sorry, I couldn't.
The nature of capital.
Yeah.
Earlier it used to be family owned and it was long term.
Take the mic, yeah, so folks can hear you. Thanks.
Earlier, most of the businesses used to be family owned or patient capital, but today the capital is very impatient.
Yeah.
People come in and they want to drive performance, drive valuations, and exit. So there is largely no concept of leadership, but it's just performance and exit, performance and exit. So how does this get addressed in an environment where capital is very impatient and people are just driving performance?
Yeah.
And
Well,
there's a toxic culture which gets built.
yeah, and again, these are the tough conversations we have with some of the organizations that we work with. Because if it isn't ultimately reinforced, there's only so much that I can even do wherever I am, right? That I can build my team in a way that allows us to develop and grow with those things and not just be focused on where's our next dollar coming from and how do we save money here and how do we do that. So it does have to have that bigger organizational focus. I think that's also where the power of coaching comes in. One of the things we often do with our clients is help them recognize how well is what you're doing right now getting you what you want. How's that setting you up for the future? And I'd say 8 to 9 times out of 10, they really aren't sure because they're only focused on the next 3 months or the next 6 months. So it is part of our role, I think, and that's where coaching can be so powerful, is we can hold up those mirrors and invite them to see how they might be limiting themselves, how they aren't pushing themselves towards being relevant, not just for the next year, but relevant for the next 5 years, the next 10 years. So that's where I think the power of coaching can come in to help people start to see the resonance or the dissonance of how they're currently running their business and how is that going to get you to where you want to be, right? Because you can bring in a business person who's going to show you, hey, and I'm a consultant, and I remember, 2008 when Bain Consulting showed up at our business. And for those of you all who remember what that was like around 2008, that usually meant something was getting ripped out and shredded up and thrown in the corner. And by then it's too late. That's all you can focus on is try to stop the hemorrhaging. So as coaches, if you build this kind of coaching infrastructure, you can actually create an environment where we start asking those questions before the hemorrhaging starts. And start to help people shift and be aware of new beliefs that we might be able to have around what is a healthy business, what are the metrics that we want to put behind that, and what's going to allow us to continue to thrive. Because the other thing to think about, especially as generationally things change around the world, the expectations of where you're getting your top talent from have changed. I spoke with, as I mentioned, I do a lot of mentoring, and I mentored someone. She's 21, coming out of university, and she talked about one of the interviews she had, and one of the questions she asked is about work-life balance. I would have never asked that question about work-life balance coming out, especially starting out in public accounting. No, we were trying to bank all of our overtime hours as quickly as possible so we could show how cool we were. I work all day and all night. I mean, I was at the office at 2 a.m. one night, and one of my managers came by and said, Tonya, what are you doing here? And my first thought is, what do you think I'm doing here? But my second thought is, wow, this is the life I've signed up for. Generationally, that's changed. We don't do that anymore. People are expecting a different kind of organization. And organizations still operating from that are going to find themselves at a loss in trying to get those people in their doors. Yeah, here.
Yeah, my question is, there seems to be a lot of churn at the leadership level, and very quickly. Every 2 years, leadership is changing.
Oh, yeah.
They're constantly moving around. How does that leave the organization in terms of, actually letting the leadership being effective in impacting the organization in a real way? Does it even give them a chance to do that?
Yeah, and in many cases it doesn't, and unfortunately a lot of organizations are not strong enough to maintain that sense of culture and value without it, so it shifts every 2 years. You get a new leader, they come in and do something different, they wipe everything out and they start over again. And there's the opportunity, hopefully, for that next leader who comes in to say, all right, let's get some clarity within this organization. How do they do that? If you plant those seeds within the organization and live it authentically, when that new leader comes in, it's hard to change it. I'm working with an organization over the past year. They're a division of a luxury car brand, and they are losing their leader who actually founded this whole division 30 years ago. So they're going to get someone new coming in from their corporate offices out of Europe. And one of the things that's so interesting about that is that organizational culture is so strong. They are already coming in prepared to prepare that leader. Here's how we do things. And they do have a very, sometimes to their detriment of harmony, they have a very family-oriented kind of team. And there's some things there that need to be fixed as well. They might be over-indexing on some of the people side of it to the point that they do have trouble making decisions. But they also don't want to lose what makes people stay there year after year after year. But because that's so embedded in their organization, even if a new leader comes in, and a person has a lot of power to make changes when they come in as the head of their division, but it's going to be hard if the people are still really immersed in their culture. So as opposed to coming in and just doing all the business stuff as a new leader comes in, I really invite us all to start thinking about what can I do with the people? Because if I build those relationships and that trust and that connection with the people, that will be there after I'm gone, for whatever reason I leave. Yeah. All right, yes. She's waiting for the mic. I love that. Good. That's good.
Sure. So I want to broaden the frame, and I don't want to ask how questions because we are all together in this.
Yeah.
So what all you said, cognitively we all agree. Even the 75% people sitting in this say that we want this.
Yeah.
At the same time, the reality, a lot of questions which came so far. And we cannot really restrict ourselves to the corporate leadership. We also look at the world. And that's where the recent discussion about, there's a Putin's interview by Carlson for 2 hours floating around on social media. And the discussion about that, it is very juvenile or naive on our part to look at the leadership as compassion or people side. Because all the role models, which is a very unfortunate aspect of it, and that's where when it comes to the profitability, the investors, the promoters, the board, because somewhere my share price, my market share is going to decide where I stand in the market.
Yeah.
And that's the whole dichotomy where I see this looks very good, we want it at a desire level. Ground reality, what all questions we asked so far, very different.
Yeah.
And that's where I want to understand, because when it comes to coaching also, very rarely we get assignments for coaching where we want our leaders to be more compassionate, we want our leaders to be more sensitive. It is more to the productivity and the profitability at the same time.
Yeah.
And that's where I thought that, what's your take on this, looking at it?
Yeah. And this is the hard stuff. But this is where we also, as coaches, stand in our space as to how I work with people. Because I do have, that's what, okay, I need you to come work with so-and-so, or we need the board to focus on this. And I tell people up front, this is how I work with people. Most of I work with executives, so C-suite, maybe AVPs and senior directors, depending on how that organization works. And I'm very clear and upfront that this person doesn't need to know how to do their job better in most cases. They're good at their job or they wouldn't be here, and you wouldn't be willing to invest money in having me come and work with them. So I'm very upfront in holding that space, that the challenges that they are having most likely are not about how do I make more money? How do I make better decisions? At least not from a business standpoint. What they are challenged with is how do they lead their teams and build the relationships, excuse me, so those teams can perform effectively. I'm working with a leader right now. I hate to use this word, but he is brilliant. I don't want anyone to feel like, oh my gosh, he's brilliant. But he is. He doesn't need help from me or consulting from me on how to do his job better, the mechanics of his job. He knows more how to do that than I do. What he needs help with is how to have this integration in his work and his life. He also needs to have help with being able to set expectations so he's not doing all the work for his teams. Because in his mind, he's still acting as though he's at a different level in his career where he could eventually, I'll come in and I'll clean stuff up. If my team's not doing it, I can do it. He's not able to be strategic. He's not able to be the senior level leader. He is, because he's still trying to do the work that he did 5 years ago with his team. So what I always do, and I'm sure many of you do this as well, when I have those initial consultations, I sit down with my client, the coachee, and their leader. And we have that conversation. And they know very well what I'm going to work with them and how I'm going to work with them. So we want to start to change those mindsets little by little. The other thing as well, how many of you are coaching with boards, speaking of boards? Not a lot of hands, right? So there's opportunity there. Because, yeah, we can have all these conversations, to your point, internally with all their senior leadership, but the board's still going to come and ask them those questions unless we get to the boards as well. And help the boards understand that there may be sacrifices that we make in the short term for long-term growth and health. So that's an opportunity to have some of those discussions and build some of those relationships, is to move beyond the senior leadership, especially for publicly traded companies. We want to get to some of those boards, and actually private ones who have internal boards. We want to start to expand our reach as well, outside of just the people who work in that office every day. And I know you're coming to get me. So thank you all so much. Happy I'll be here today, so please feel free to come by. I'm so excited to have met all of you. And again, thank you so much from the ICF.